Welcome to the Equity Institute's podcast on the purpose of public education with me, your host, Vincent Perez. Today, we'll be talking with Elizabeth LeCompte, a 25-year educator, both in the classroom and as a librarian. Elizabeth has served with me on the Dare to Dream Academies for La Cima Bilingual Leadership Camp and is someone who creates safe spaces for young people, especially in her library. Please welcome Elizabeth LeCompte. Thank you so much for being here, Elizabeth. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what your connection to public education is?
Well, currently I'm a high school librarian at Pasco High School in Washington State, and this is my 25th year in public education. When I started out teaching, I taught beginning, intermediate, and advanced ESL, so I had lots of newcomer kids, up to kids that were transitioning out of programs. And then I switched to 8th grade, just English language arts. And I taught 8th grade for 10 years and then switched to the library.
My first question here right out of the chutes is, what is the purpose of public education?
To give, honestly. Like, kids need someone that's going to give them the information, the skills, the ideas, the like theoretical like basis of all kinds of like things so that they can like go out and do life.
You know, I've been wondering a lot about skills and information, and thinking about, the students, we've had the internet for some time, their whole lives. Now that you have things like AI, ChatGPT. So I'm wondering, are we necessarily useful for information if they have access to it at their fingertips, or if it's more of the relational component of, being human with other humans? Because information is there, although access to it, I'm curious actually as a librarian, do students know how to even navigate or access the information? What do you see?
Kids now get that digital native like category or categorization, but they're all great on social media. But I feel like what's missing is like that deeper piece of like how to use some of the use AI or chat GPT or whatever it is, because kids, if it's not like the first 5 things that come up in a Google search, they don't know how to access it. I think that most of them also struggle with then, if they've got the information, disseminating it. Like, because there's so much information out there, like it's overwhelming. And if you've never been taught, people are like, oh yeah, we got to teach like reliable sources and like, looking at like where this information came from. Like everybody's like, oh, we need to teach this. But there's not a lot of places specifically where that is taught. And it's probably something that should be taught starting from elementary school on. Kids get it in high school a bit. And so I feel like a lot of kids are just like drowning in this like glut of information and they don't know what to do with it.
So I'm curious if it's then really to help them be adults, right? And I even remember just a few months ago my nephew saying, wow, adulting is hard. So there's just this kind of fact of life. But I posit the same thing, that K-12 at its best foster stable human beings. So what knowledge, skills, and attributes do we need to be a stable human being? For me, a lot around SEL and just managing your own inner world and being in relation. It's a huge part of, I think, of who we are as humans. And then this other kind of academic component. And I put that in quotes because it's all intellectual development and learning to me. But I'm curious if there are any models or theories or particular approaches. I think especially as you reflect on your work with English language learners, what have you seen really work? Is there policies or practices that really support students?
Well, I think you're right with like the SEL component of it. Any policy or practice that is grounded in that is going to do a better job of supporting students and getting them where they need to be than just okay, sit down, shut up, I'm going to throw all this information at you. Like, there's people out there that are successful with that. That's fine with me. Like, I can learn that way if I just sit somewhere and, you throw information at me. But I think that's not the majority of people. And I think that it's definitely not kids today it kind of also goes back to like that, like internet, I don't know, whatever component. Kids are like on all the social media sites and they have all these friends that they've never met, never seen, chat with only online. But then when face to face with an actual human being, then they're like, oh my God, I have so much anxiety. I can't talk to this person. I can't go like, advocate for myself in real life with a real human being. And so it's almost like there's this whole like human component that has been lost a little bit because it's a lot easier to hide behind that anonymity of your device. I think by like increasing that SEL component, it's only going to help kids because like it's a struggle for them to deal with those kind of things right now. I don't know how, I mean, probably every day is how often kids will be like, they'll come ask me a question and I'll say like, oh, you need to go talk to this person or this person. They're like, oh, miss, I can't do that. Like, what do I say? How do I go talk to them? And so like literally just talking to another human being is a struggle. I think just because everybody's so isolated, like unless you're a really extroverted person and go out there and are like, yeah, let's do this. I want to talk with all the people. It's easy to take a step back and just hide behind whatever device you've got in your hand. And so I think for in the classroom, then it becomes a struggle for teachers to interact with kids because they just don't want to. It's become like such a high risk thing to like put yourself out there because if a kid, everybody is going to like whip out their phone and record you. And nobody wants, that like public humiliation or mockery that may come with, someone sending a video of you doing something out to everyone they know on Snapchat or something. And so that's like a huge thing that teachers have to combat is like, sure, you might have really engaging content. You might be a really engaging teacher, but to get the kids to actually engage is really hard. And so I think unless you can establish that like relationship with the kids so that they feel safe in your classroom or in your school or in that place, it's hard to get them to want to participate in whatever content you're trying to teach them. Even the classes where you would think like a lot of the elective classes, like kids are choosing this class, it should be fun. They should want to be there. Those teachers still struggle with like getting kids to participate or want to do, whatever the project is.
But what have you seen work? I mean, in terms of like that actual engagement.
So in our building, we have like I feel like we have all the programs. We do so much. And so I don't know if there's any one thing because it seems like it takes a combination of everything. Like, we've got like migrant groups that do stuff like we've got groups that like do stuff with specific groups of kids. So like our migrant program is pretty robust and they've got all kinds of like after school things that they do with kids. And so I guess maybe what those kids that are most successful are the ones that are in programs for like they've got other kids that they can connect with. They've got like a specific teacher or adult in the building, even if it's not a teacher they have in the classroom that they can connect with. And so like I'll use the migrant kids as an example. Our migrant like person in our building and like they do stuff with kids after school at lunch. They've got like all kinds of really cool activities that they do, but they're not in a classroom teaching. But those kids know like, oh, they can go to that adult in the building. And if they have questions about like, I don't understand like this homework, or I want to be in this class, how do I get in it? And our building is working so hard on like making connections with kids, like either the kids having an adult that they've made a connection with, that they have another kid that they've made a connection with. We've got peer mentors in our building, like we have Link Crew. So all of these different things, and the kids that are, will poo-poo that and don't want to participate, they're the ones that have lower grades. They're the ones that struggle. They're the ones that don't want to come to school. So, I mean, the yeah, getting just someone in the building that a kid can somehow have, even if it's just the tiniest little connection to, so that they want to come to school, or that at least they don't hate being at school. They've got someone that they can either go ask questions to, that they can go complain to. I feel like that makes the biggest difference.
At a school like yours where there's hundreds of students, yet they're feeling alone.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about, even in this effort to connect and ensure that every student has at least one adult to connect with at the school, what are the challenges to that? And how do you manage those?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because, we're at close to 3,000 kids in our building. I don't know the exact number, but it's real close to that or over. So obviously, like, that's a real skewed ratio. I think we've got like maybe 120-ish teachers. And so that's a lot to ask a teacher to do. Like, we need you to get like legit, like hardcore connections with this massive group of kids. I think through our cohort, like that's maybe the best attempt at that, because the cohort is set up so that the kids are with that same teacher for 4 years. So that is a little better. Like they've, by the time they're a senior and they're like trying to fill out college applications or, resumes or whatever, they've got someone that has been working with them for 4 years that can be like, that they can go to and ask for help. But I mean, it's like, we're like a small city, but it's a small city of people that are together, but alone. Then those kids, they're only at school 6-7 hours a day or whatever, and they go home and there's just so much life happening for them that those school connections don't necessarily carry over to any place outside of the building. And that's just this whole other overwhelming thing for kids. So I guess it more has to be, it doesn't feel good to just use the word hope that'll like, but that's all it is. You got to like hope that some of the skills that they're learning and making those connections at school, they'll then be able to apply outside of school with some outside connections or supports or whatever.
You said there's so much life that they're experiencing. Also in these projects with these days with these school districts, we worked with students for a month to prepare to give a message, and there was a large part, and these were all Latino, Latine, Latinx, Raza, Hispanic, Chicano students. And they are kind of not necessarily pleading, but really trying to communicate very clearly, we got other things going on. We're working so that we can help our parents pay rent. We're taking care of our little siblings because our parents are working. And all these other responsibilities. How have you seen their other, like the rest of their life outside of school impact their learning?
Like, it's just massive. Because I mean, my school is the exact same demographic. I think we're like 80%, like Latina, all of that, maybe even higher. It might be 85 or 90%. But the majority of our kids have younger siblings that they have to take care of. They have jobs. They are actively contributing to keeping their household running. And so, I mean, of course, like, algebra is not as important and at the forefront of your mind if you're like, okay, got to make sure we can pay the rent this month. Like, it's a triage situation for a lot of these kids where they just have to like stop what's bleeding immediately and take care of that before they can focus on those other things. And so, there's a lot of kids that are not going to choose school as their priority, even though you could ask any of those kids, like, why is school important? Why is it important to graduate? Why is it important to get that diploma? And they could absolutely tell you, like, well, if I want a good future, I need this. If I want to be able to get a job, like a better paying job than working in the field, I need this. So they know, but knowing doesn't help with the doing in this case.
That makes me think, just right. I mean, if you had it on visually, like, what's between the knowing and the doing?
Everything. Life.
Well, I mean, it really gets to, so they know it's useful to get this, this diploma, but they're not finding their classes or the knowledge that they're gaining in their classes useful, right? It's not very applicable to their life.
Right. It's nothing that's useful immediately. Like, I mean, let's be honest. I don't know when, other than like playing trivia games, I've used what I learned in like AP US history. There are things that are like hoops that you have to jump through, which I mean, that's true in any aspect of life, not just education, but like in your jobs and stuff. There's hoops you have to jump through, but when you then have to balance, okay, here's this hoop I have to jump through to get to this goal that I want to reach, but I gotta go like I've got 3 younger brothers and sisters that I have to take care of. Which one's more important?
You mentioned AP history or just history in general. For me, working with La Cima and La Chispa and these other projects, the Jerry Dream Academies with migrant youth, historicizing their lives. Can you tell us about your family's educational history and what that means to you? Is a big question we've been asked. And I asked these teachers all last week as well. Like, we have to contextualize ourselves in that. How have I been influenced just in terms of family and formal schooling? Because I am also very clear that education does not equal intelligence, right? Especially when we think about the parents of your students. So we hear everything, a whole vast everything from, 3rd grade, like, they even use the word dropped out. And I'm just like, I don't know if you can really drop out in 3rd grade, but you know what I mean? The
Right.
access and opportunity is not there.
Yeah.
In various other countries as well. So everything from that to like, oh, my mom has an engineering degree from Colombia, but she can't do that here because it's not recognized, and she's actually cleaning a house, something like this, right? So all that kind of vast in between. But when I give them the history of tamales and show that that it's 9,000 years old, and they're connected to it in a way, because I ask, for a show of hands, how many of you actually not only eat and love this food but have made it? Mm-hmm. Your hands are in the I show of hands, so your hands have been in the masa. You're part of this tradition, which is an indigenous tradition. It's not a Mexican or any other national origin. It is an indigenous food from the Great Lakes to the Gulf to all, la gente de maíz, people of the corn. And there's something very rooting, like they feel rooted in this knowledge that they belong here, right? There's this kind of self-empowerment. I've been really thinking about Peter McLaren in the book, The Art of Critical Pedagogy with Jeff Duncan Andrade, writes about these 3 areas of knowledge construction. The technical, which is basically teaching to the test, right? These memorization of multiplications or whatever these things, right? And you can feed it back and regurgitate it back. This kind of knowledge construction is really what we do a lot of. The practical, which is skills that can apply to, to adult life. In the last few years interviewing students, I've just heard so much like, I just want to learn how to do my taxes, like just the practical. I got to pay a bill. How do I adult?
Yeah.
And the last one
I have a friend whose daughter is a 10th grader, and I was asking her about her schedule for this year, and she actually has an adulting 101 class.
Oh, right on. So it's finally making its way.
Yeah. So she's had like 3 days of school now. I'll see her this weekend. I'm gonna have to ask her like, so what are you learning in this? Because I'm curious what they're teaching in that class.
I think I would take that class. It sounds enticing. Adulting 101.
Yeah.
And then the last one is emancipatory, right? This concept that you're harnessed. So your agency. So when you think about, oh, I have to go talk to that person, what would help students feel empowered so that they have the confidence to go whatever that, addressed, make their way to actually walk to the person and engage. So I'm curious where you find students like this idea of I can, right? To me, if we're teaching, that's really what's happening, right? We teach I can, right? I can go talk to the person. I can do the math problem. I can learn.
Yeah. Well, and some of that just like, especially like the talking to the person or whatever, it's not a skill that people are born with. It's something you have to practice. And I think there's just not lots of time for that practice because everything's so hung up on, okay, we've got these state standards. We have to get these standards covered because there's tests and like, you have to prove that you know this stuff. And I know one of the things, it's been a while, I feel like, since I've seen one where they like the seniors are like having them reflect on like their senior year of like, oh, what what was like the most valuable thing for you in school or whatever. And so all of our 11th graders do through their financial lit class do mock interviews. And so they bring in, the kids have to like, type up a resume. They bring in community members. And so the kids have to like, dress professionally. And they come in and they go through a whole interview with a stranger that they don't know. And so many kids are like, that was like the most useful thing for me. Like, it's going to, like, they'll say, I don't feel as like scared and anxious about having to go on an interview now. So like somehow there needs to be more of that like real world application. And I don't know what that looks like in an English class or a math class, but when the kids talk about what they remember, what they find the most useful, it's those mock interviews that they get the practice with writing the resume, with talking to someone. And it's a very low risk situation. Like, it's in the high school library, it's a place they've been, and they're still so nervous when they walk in that door. But I'd say 97% of them like do it. There's like a handful of kids that are like, I refuse, I will not do this. And then as soon as it's over, they're like, oh, big sigh of relief. And they're like, that wasn't that as bad as I thought it was going to be. And so there needs to be opportunities for kids to just like practice and do things in those low risk settings so that they can realize it's not as bad as they've let their mind spin it out to be.
Experiential education, right?
Yeah.
Kim shared with us a TikTok with me the other day of an elementary teacher who interviews for the jobs in the classroom. And so, I mean, they dress up, they bring a resume, the whole thing. And, it's like, I'm applying for the job of erasing the board. Oh, what skills do you have? I'm tall.
I love it.
And then at the end of the day, they have to wait, right? They have to wait. At the end of the day, they get a letter, and you just see there's the whole process, right? I got the job. They're holding it up.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's that practice, right? That experiential learning. Even I heard a story just the other day from a teacher who said one of the most kind of beautiful learning moments for him was being in middle school in English class and writing to I think the assignment was to write to a company that some brand.
Oh, yeah.
And then he said he really liked beef jerky. So he wrote to this beef jerky company and he got this care package of jerky. Awesome. And he was just like, he was really impressed with the power of the written word. It's like, what? I can get free stuff just by writing.
Well, and the thing I like about that elementary example you gave is that the whole experience is good, but also at the elementary level, like, I think you could probably ask a lot of elementary kids, like, what does the word interview mean? Or what, and they wouldn't know. So they're even just like at a much younger level, or, starting to learn some of that vocabulary that maybe isn't applicable to them at that age, but will be eventually.
It was really interesting to see how talk about engagement. They were just in it, right? They're just in the thing, in the learning. I'm curious, right? I think the themes I'm pulling out of this conversation is really about connection with students. I think there's some bigger educational observations and wonderings I have about a massive school like yours, 3,000 students, 6-period school day. Like, I don't know, there's got to be just some other way to organize us so that it's not just bells ringing, turn, move, all the things. Oh, I'm bored now, I'm just, part of it is mastery-based learning or to me, that's an approach to really think about how students show what they know.
And this is the first year that I think across the board, everything is standards-based grading. And so there's no grading on, oh, did you show up to class? You get 1 point. Or, oh, you participated, you get a point. There's like, homework is not like, oh, great, you did this like drill worksheet. It's just, where did you perform to meet that standard? And so it'll be interesting so our science department, our history department have been doing it for quite a while. It'll be interesting to see like what impact that has with the whole school doing the standards-based grading. But I don't have any information on that right now because it's the first year. We've been at it 3 days.
So there are movements like that I see happening. a lot of SEL, and the students are really ringing the bell on mental health, right? I feel like they're saying we need support. That to me is messages I'm hearing. And also, I'm hearing a lot from queer youth that they're not well, right? They're not safe. There's a lot of what I call it just ringing the bell, and they're hurting, right? So they're hurting, especially for their counterparts in other states where
Right.
legislation is being really pushed through. And so, yeah, this anti-trans, anti-queer legislation is really impacting our young, our queer youth.
And I absolutely agree. I think it's a little bit hard here because we're pretty lucky in
Yeah, we're kind of a quote,
Washington.
kind of a safe state
And
legislatively.
yeah. And like even like in our district, like I mean, we have gender neutral bathrooms. We have like kids get to choose their pronouns on all of their school documents and stuff. They can, if they go by a different name that's not on their birth certificate, they can change it on there, and they don't even have to have parent permission to do it. Like the kids can be like, this is what I go by now. And so yeah, compared to like other places, we're so inclusive, but I guess at the same time, there's still, those people that it's not great on like social media or just like stuff out there. And so even though like there's people doing the right thing and like trying to make it easier for those kids, it's still such a huge struggle.
Yeah, yeah. And there's still bullying, and there's
Yeah.
still, all the rest, feeling
Yeah.
unsafe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious though, then if you had any calls to action or next steps, like if, as folks listening to this, thinking about maybe it is, really engaging and connecting with young people and how to invite that in. But I'm curious, is there any other calls to action that you would offer?
Like education is overwhelming, not just for students, but for teachers also, because it's like, okay, you've got these standards you have to cover. You've got this behavior thing you have to do. We've got this social emotional component we want you to do. We've got this like, this, that, and the other thing. And so there's just so much, which makes it a struggle. And I guess if I was going to say like a call, I don't know, a call to action, but it would be like, because there's also like a very negative view right now just of public education in the US. And people are like, oh, teachers aren't working hard. They don't, they've got these summer vacations and like they're not teaching kids anything, or they're teaching kids the wrong thing, or they're trying to brainwash kids. They're trying like this, that, and the other. And so there's just such this negative perception of public education. And so I guess I would challenge those people that are out there saying like, oh, this is garbage. Like they're ruining the youth of America. Like go volunteer and spend a week in a school and see what it's like see what the hallways are like, see what a classroom is like, because I think the more people that like get engaged with education that haven't been like, they graduated from high school and they were done with it, like they haven't thought about it until it became this political issue, I think they'd be surprised like how hard everyone is trying, from administrators to teachers to students. Like there is no one there saying, okay, can't wait to get to work today to mess up a kid. Like that's not a thing. And it just seems like people don't realize that. And so I would say volunteer, or like if your school's asking for people to interview kids for mock interviews, volunteer and do that. Go talk to a kid for an hour, once a trimester, or go help kids read books in an elementary school or something, just to see even what content is being taught, because it's really not as contentious as I feel like public opinion would lead people to believe.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't doubt people's intentions or goodness, I guess, of like, if you're choosing this field, if you're choosing this vocation, you care about young people. Yeah, hands down, to me, I want to honor that and lift it up. And there's something about the system to me that's
yes,
the hard thing, right? Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this conversation, and really, I think, want to pull out that theme of connection, right? That's what I hear. And what I've heard stories from you also is that students go to the library to feel safe. and there's something happening there that's not in the other spaces in the building.
Yeah, I guess I do. We get tons of kids that they'll either like they maybe have one friend in this building of 3,000 kids, and they'll go sit together in the library like at lunch, or they don't have any other friends and they'll come just sitting there and either read a book or mess around on their phone. Or I was surprised last year, I added, like, I just always have a puzzle out for kids to work on. I was sketchy at first. I was like, man, there's going to be that one jerk that like steals 2 pieces so we can never finish the puzzle. The kids are amazing. They did, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 puzzles last year, but there's kids that will come in, just that one kid by themselves, and they always come in at like our first lunch period, and they'll sit there and work on that. And it's right by my desk, so it's interesting to watch. There'll be that one kid that consistently comes in, and then there's another kid that'll come in, and then they don't know, and they'll start like chatting, and then they've kind of like made a puzzle friend. And they were kids that didn't know each other. They might not even be in the same grade or classes, but then they'll both start coming in at lunch to like work on that puzzle together. And so, as much as I hate puzzles, they've apparently been rather powerful.
I love that idea. It's my puzzle friend. There's something about that. What did you
not do anything else together, but they come do a puzzle together at lunch.
Wow, that's interesting. What you just set out, and then they come to it.
Yeah. It's like a Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come, I guess.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and I did just start this year. Kids haven't started it yet. I'm excited for it because they're going to be able to check out stuff. So I've got like, they could check out a sewing machine or a guitar or a ukulele or an accordion or a podcast equipment or microscopes or binoculars or fishing poles or tents and stuff. So
oh wow.
Yeah, there's going to be all this like stuff that kids can check out. So again, that kind of hopefully maybe we're coming back to that like connectedness issue, because maybe there's a kid that like high school's not really their jam. Like they're not into sports, so they don't have the connection there. They're not into band, so they don't have the connection there. But they could come and check out like I've got like backpacks that have like a Garmin GPS thing and like hiking poles and stuff. Maybe they'll get into geocaching. And then there's this whole group outside of education or the school. There's like, geocaching groups that maybe they could connect with. Or I've got a whole bunch of like knitting stuff. So maybe a kid gets into knitting and then they find I'm sure there's knitting groups out there. So hopefully that'll be another avenue for kids to like create some connections with other people that then they can, go to for questions or support or whatever.
Well, and by interest, I'd be curious to see after the school year what that whole system looks like. Even for a young person who's, playing their ukulele or guitar and just gets a little recording equipment and, can make a little album. I could see all that creativity unfold with access to tools like that.
Yeah, that's the hope. It's another one of those educational hopes.
Well, I'll be curious to see how that hope turns into, actual doing. Right from that.
Yeah. We could have the world's next banjo superstar.
You got a banjo? Right.
Go by.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your perspective and your vocation, right? That's there's something to me about educators that I just always appreciate, feel very akin to and connected to in terms of this, chosen service.
Yeah, it's fun. I do it because it's fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome.